3500 BC. Mesopotamian cultures are believed to have been the original inventors of wheels. Though the premise is based solely on existing archaeological evidence, the Mesopotamian civilization used these early wheels for pottery creation. The first wheels and axle cart designed by the early Greeks were very basic on construction. They essentially consisted of just two rods with a wheel and an axle on the end. They could be used to carry large loads through fields. 5,000 years ago, wagons, coaches, and carriages were invented. Before people started to use wagons and carts, they would put big logs under goods they wanted to move and roll the logs along the ground. The first kinds of wheeled vehicles were carts with two wheels and wagons for having four wheels. 3rd century. Donkeys and mules were used for transportation. This was very important for trade across the Saharan desert, but donkeys cannot survive long without food and water, and they were replaced by camels. The ancient Greeks and Romans used them to pull carts and carry loads. Later, in the 20th century, they were used for military transport. 1817. First bicycle was invented. In 1817, in Germany, Baron Carbon Dries made the first ever bicycle. The first bicycle was developed between 1780 and 1817. The first bicycle did not have pedals. 1885, Gottlieb Daimler developed the motorcycle. It was not the first attempt to motorize bicycles. Earlier attempts by inventors such as Sylvester Howard Rupert included experiments where steam engines were attached to bicycles. However, they did not work well, and it was only when the petrol engine was invented that motorcycles became practical.
In the 19th century, the steam engines, trains, and trams were invented. Before then, the idea of a vehicle running along a fixed track is actually much older. The train was developed out of the steam engine that James Watt developed in the 1760s. Trains were the product of the Industrial Revolution and were aided by the growth of coal mining. In the year 1769, the first car was invented by French inventor Nicolas Joseph Cugnot. His car could travel at about 4 kilometers per hour and was called the steam wagon. It had 3 wheels, 2 in the back and 1 in the front, along with a steam boiler. In the year 1771, the first car accident happened when the vehicle crashed against a brick wall. In 1884, the first electric car was made by Thomas Davenport Parker. It took Davenport 132 trials before to finally make this car. The English inventor Thomas Parker overhead tramways in Liverpool and Birmingham, and the smokeless fuel collide, and also built the first production electric car in Wolverhampton in 1884. In the year 1885, the first automobile running on gas was invented. In the year 1885, in Mannheim, Germany, Carl Benz made the first automobile that ran on gas. It was the first car that had an internal combustion. The Benz patent Motorwagen is widely regarded as the world's first production automobile. In the year 1908, Henry Ford and the Model T came in. Henry Ford, a pioneer American automaker, wanted to make a car that many people in all walks of life could afford. He achieved this goal with his car called Model T in 1908, which he sold for $850. On October 1st, 1964, the world's first bullet train was made. The world's first high-speed rail network was known as Yume no Shotokyu, which means as the Super Express of Dreams. The first line in Japan's now world-famous Shinkansen network, which would come to be known as the bullet train, was built against all odds in the face of fears. The maximum speed of this train was 186 miles per hour. In the years 1993 to 2006, the smart car was invented and established. Swatch Watch inventor Nicholas Hayek takes his ideas for an ultra-urban car to Mercedes-Benz, and a joint venture is born. Mercedes-Benz engineers takes on his challenge with a full development concept car. In 1997, the Smart 42 vehicle debuts at the Frankfurt Motor Show with a fantastic response. In 1998, this leads to full production of the 42 and were brought to Europe. In 2006, plans were put in place to make the second generation Smart 42 and introduced it to the United States.
Water transportation. Let's start with the first boat. The Pesce canoe is the oldest water transportation ever to be recovered and is believed to have existed in the early Mesolithic period around 8,000 years BCE. Aside from the Pesce canoe, there are also early vessels throughout history like reed boats and rafts. Because of large trees, these canoes are made from hollow tree trunk and eventually developed various forms of canoes. These boats are primarily used for fishing and travel. The frame boat. With one of the earliest boats, a frame boat is a basket-shaped vessel covered with animal skin and coated and sealed with tar so that the water could not pass through. The reed boat. Around 4000 BC, reed boats are depicted in petroglyphs and were most common in ancient Egypt. Materials which were papyrus reeds, widely cultivated and came from the Nile River and Delta for the ancient Egyptians to build boats. These boats were used as traditional fishing boats. The wooden boat. Around 2500 BC, the ancient Egyptians have built boats entirely out of wood and held together by ropes, and that is suitable for sailing across oceans. The era of sailing ships. In the 15th to 18th century, during the Age of Discovery, early Europeans encountered peoples and mapped the lands that were previously unknown to them. The Europeans used the sailing ships, and these were used as battleships for trade and mostly for overseas exploration. A sailing ship is a vessel that uses sails mounted onto the masts to harness the power of the wind and make the vessel move windward.
1912. RMS Titanic was a British passenger liner operated by the White Star Line that sank in the North Atlantic Ocean on April 15, 1912, after striking an iceberg during her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City. 1990s. Cruise liners are ships that carry hundreds of people on floating holidays. Symphony of the Seas is the world's largest cruise ship.
In 1783, the Montgolfier brothers launched their first hot air balloon. Joseph and Etienne Montgolfier designed and built the first balloon to carry a basket containing people into the air. The balloon was made with paper and cloth, and the air inside the balloon was heated by smoke from the fire on the ground below. The balloon was anchored to the ground with a rope and stayed aloft for about 15 minutes. The Wright brothers made the first engine-powered flight in the Flyer. It flew for 12 seconds and traveled 37 meters. The Wrights wanted a lightweight petrol engine, but they could not find anyone who would build one to their specifications, so they built their own 4-cylinder model. British inventor Frank Whittle invents the jet engine. Whittle obtained his first patent for a turbojet engine in 1930. In 1936, he joined with associates to found a company called Powerjets Ltd. The jet engine of his invention was fitted to a specially built Gloster E-2829 airframe, and the plane's maiden flight took place on May 15, 1941. Jet passenger service began in the United States in late 1950s with the introduction of Boeing 707 and Douglas DC-8 airliners. Pan American introduced the overseas flights on 707s in October 1958. National Airlines soon began domestic jet service using a 707 borrowed from Pan Am. American Airlines opened domestic jet service with their own 707 in January 1959. Delta and United began flying DC-8s later that year. In 2005, the largest passenger aircraft so far, the double-deck Airbus A380 can carry more than 800 passengers. In 2011, the Transition by the Tarfugia is a roadable aircraft, an aeroplane that can take off and land at any airport, and with the push of a button, fold up its wings and drive down the road. In 2016, Solar Impulse 2 is the first plane powered by a renewable energy source to tour the globe.
The Manunggul jar is one of the several stunning artifacts discovered in Chamber A, Manunggul Cave in Lipoon Point, Palawan. The Manunggul jar is actually a secondary burial jar used to store the bones of someone who was previously buried. The lid features a spirit boat or ship of the dead. Othon Death Mask. The golden death mask of Othon consists of gold nose disc and eye mask, both of which are found in a grave site in San Antonio, Othon, Iloilo. The gold mask dated from the late 14th to the early 15th century AD. It is the first of its kind recovered in the Philippines. It was part of the ancient burial practice, with the gold mask serving as an amulet against evil spirits. Bulol, also known as Tinagtago, is a carved wooden figure used to guard the rice crop by the Ifugao peoples of the northern Luzon. The sculptures are highly styled representation of ancestors and are thought to gain power and wealth from the presence of the ancestral spirit. The ancient Panumhan ritual box is a wooden box that has a cover on it. It is used by the Ifugaos in doing rituals to have a satisfaction in abundant rice production. It is made from hard narrow wood with a pig head on both sides. The two pig heads are said to indicate the value of the pigs as a ritual sacrificial animal while doing the Ifugao ritual. Panolong is a house ornament specialized by the Maranao people. The shape of panolong is an architectural transition to pro, which also means protruding part located in front of the sheep. Kulintang of the southern Philippines is part of the larger ancient gong and chime tradition. The term refers to both instrument, which comprises of 8 knob gongs laid horizontally on a wooden frame. The baliog is a traditional layered necklace of different ethnic groups on the island of Visayas and Mindanao in the Philippines. They consist of necklace and necklace with fringe of beads and other adornments. More than usual were worn layered of top of each other. The ikat fabric is a dyeing technique to create a distinct style of textile patterns. In ikat, the piece is formed by binding individual yarns or bundle of yarns with a tight wrapping applied in the design pattern. The yarns are then dyed. The bindings may then be altered to create a new pattern and the yarns dyed again with another color. The kampilan is a type of single-edged long sword used as a traditional blade throughout the Philippine archipelago. The kampilan is a distinct profile with a tapered blade being much broader and thinner at the point than its base, sometimes with protruding spike along the flat line of the tip, which is believed to represent a mythical creature's open mouth. The barong is a thick, lift-shaped, single-edged blade sword. It is a weapon used by the Muslim Filipino ethno-linguistic groups like Tausug, Sama-Badjao, or Yakan in southern Philippines. The barong blades are thick and very heavy, with the weight adding and slicing capacity of the sword.